All right, everybody, welcome in to Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. And it's episode 68, as we are here at the Ides of March. For those of you familiar with ancient Roman history, beware the Ides of March. And for a lot of basketball teams, it's beware March Madness. I'm Nikhil, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee of the United States. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is my partner in crime, Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, it's time. It's March Madness.
Oh yeah, hey, always nice to have doing things going good here in Brazil. Here is also a little bit of called it's being like a March Madness in terms of upsets. Like I know there's gonna be a lot of upsets in college basketball in a few days, but in Brazil there's already a lot of upsets in soccer in state championships. I'm gonna talk a lot about it from teams when going to their first ever semifinal to uh team went from relegated to also semifinalist, and we have a lot to dive in, and also a lot of drama in the NFL, and definitely you know as everybody I guess in the world of sports journalism in America does in March, the men's and women's NCAA basketball bracket.
Absolutely. And it's time to really dig in. We know what the bracket looks like. So we know what these teams have to deal with from week to week, game to game, round to round. And frankly, I just think the overall message that I would say heading into this tournament is there are no great teams in college basketball this year. There's no one or two or three dominant teams. There are obvious championship locks. I think you have a group of maybe 15, 20 teams that if they get hot the next 6 weeks, they can, or 6 games, they can win it all. But any of those teams could get upset in the first round, too. It is going to be a wild tournament. Upsets are going to be abound. And we're going to try to figure out which one of those upsets are likely to happen. And that's going to be hard to do.
One team that I remember last year that nobody bet on, and I fully bet and went all the way to the national championship was North Carolina. I remember nobody
No.
was, believing on the Tar Heels. I was the one who was like feeling it, and they went to the national championship and lost to Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great run. Of course, I think they did get some breaks along the way. Obviously, getting to play St. Peter's in the Elite Eight helped, but taking out Duke in the Final Four, I mean that was almost that's basically a national championship in its own right for UNC. And also, just quick, while we're on the topic of UNC, they failed to make the tournament. They were one of the first four out. How how soft is it that they didn't even want to compete in the NIT? They're like, oh, we don't want to do this tournament's beneath us, and it just makes you look petty. Like you had a bad season, own it, go play in the NIT, try to create some momentum for next year. I mean, my goodness, it just makes you look soft. Like, yes, we know you're North Carolina. You're supposed to be a Final Four contender every year, but you look weak. You look so weak for not taking
And
that
I
invitation.
feel like I think you sum up best in terms of feeling superior, even though I know last year they went to the national championship, but the past 5 7 years has not been great to the Tar Heels. But having this level of arrogance of oh, we don't play in the national invite tournament. It's been like, come on, like think about this as like, let's get ready for next year. Let's use this tournament for see who's going to be the starter or see what is the roster like. I don't know. I was thinking about it, comparing a little bit between NIT and the big majority of bowl games, because that's I feel like that's the biggest great thing about uh, the college basketball compared to college football. Is just the way they kept their tradition in terms of the March Madness. There has not been any. I guess there hasn't been any changes in a you know last year's the way the format or anything like that. So you have a lot of programs engaged, but the NIT is not like a meaningless bowl game that is for a bucket. It's a way for the teams to keep in activity and also prepare for next year.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for some programs, NIT is a great boon for them. Like, one team we get brought up here is Vanderbilt. A lot of people were very upset that Vanderbilt didn't make it. Um, and maybe they have an argument because they were one of the best teams in the field the last month of the season. But unfortunately for Vanderbilt, the college basketball season is a 3-month sport and a 4-month sport rather. And they really weren't playing well until the last month and a half. So they didn't build up the wins that they needed to get in. And I think their non-conference schedule just wasn't good enough for Vanderbilt to get in. They weren't even one of the first 4 out. But for Vanderbilt, they're playing so hot right now that you can definitely see them maybe making a run in the NIT tournament. They beat Yale in the first round, and they might in the next round here to get in to play Michigan.
One thing I want to mention about this game was a very big IQ game between Vandy and Yale, very two prestigious universities.
Oh yeah, Vanderbilt and Michigan too, also a very high IQ game as well. Because Michigan too is also.
Go ahead.
I said Michigan too, also a well-renowned school for its academic prowess as well. So, I think for both of those teams, Michigan this year actually had a down year compared to what they normally have. So I think they're just trying to tread water and figure out a way to get back to the top. But, already in the NIT, we saw Rutgers get upset by Hofstra. So there's no gimmies at all in this tournament. So some of the top teams that were left out, Oklahoma State, Clemson, Rutgers, and Oregon are some of the top teams that were left out of the tournament.
I guess Clemson University is just in a moment of their not very good moment in terms of the two major sports, football and men's basketball.
Yeah, so it's not a great season for them in any respect. But obviously NIT is NIT. If you are a fan of this program, you'll care about that. But the rest of us, we have the NCAA tournament, 68 teams, now down to really 66, about to be 65 here in a little bit. Right now, we have 2 16 seeds going at it in Dayton, Ohio. We have Farley Dickinson, the Farley Dickinson Knights, I believe they're of Long Island, going up against the Texas Southern Tigers. I believe that's their name. Farley Dickinson's up by I think it's 14 points. So they're on their way to taking on Purdue on Friday in the next round. There's been some discussion this week about should these 16 seeds have to even play in these playing games. These smaller schools, they win their conferences. They have to play an extra game to get to the actual Thursday, Friday matchups. And a lot of people are saying it's unfair. I've seen some people, though, on the other side argue that it gives them a chance to actually win an NCAA tournament game, considering that only 16 seeds ever won in UMBC. And, for each game you win the NCAA tournament, you get extra money. So, it is an interesting point of debate I've seen this week.
I was going to make the comparison late in the Brazilian topic, but March Madness and the Brazilian Cup look very similar. It's like you have, of course, the big teams, but you also have teams that came out of nowhere that you probably don't even heard of, and you have some big schools out, like you mentioned, Michigan, Clemson, Vanderbilt, from top conferences that are out. Just like the Brazilian Cup. It's so similar.
Oh, yeah. It's always going to mix. You never know who's going to be up at the top. And then you've got football schools like Alabama and as the top overall seed. You have Tennessee as a top 4 seed. Texas is a 2 seed. These are not normally basketball powers. So you got a good mix of schools up here vying for the crown here. So let's kind of go down the list. We're going to start here in I believe this is hold on, let me go back over to, I got to find my bracket.
The Alabama.
This is the South region.
Yeah, the South region. Alabama #1 versus Texas A&M or
Corpus Christi.
Texas A&M of Corpus Christi.
Yes, right there on the coast of Texas. Of course, they won yesterday. They had to survive a late shot by Southeastern Missouri State to win by a point.
I guess Alabama can take care of business. I don't see anything. I mean, they're even playing in Birmingham, Alabama, so it's literally a home game. So give me the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I'll say this: both Auburn and Alabama both are getting to play in Birmingham, so good for their local regional. Clearly, Tennessee has not gotten that same treatment in the past. I'll just point that out, but that's neither here or there in terms of favoritism. One storyline that is interesting about Alabama, I don't know if you saw this, but Brandon Miller literally is having extra security right now because people are threatening him over the whole what happened off the field with Darius Miles, the whole shooting situation. So you just have to wonder if he's going to face some stuff related to that throughout this tournament. And is that going to rattle this team at all? Of course, Alabama took care of business last week in Nashville. They won the SEC tournament. They're hot right now. They're the favorite to win. But they've had some sketchy games down the stretch. And you just have to wonder if that's going to catch up with Alabama at some point this season or this postseason.
But I guess both picked the Crimson Tide.
Oh, yeah. All right, so they'll play either Maryland or West Virginia. And this one, I think, to me, it's a pretty even matchup. As many 8-9 games go. What's interesting about West Virginia is they're 7-11 in conference play, but they're out of the Big 12. And the Big 12 was by far the best conference this year. And Maryland, they played Tennessee. That was a very close game. Vols came out by 3 points. Maryland does not have a great offense. I really like West Virginia here.
Give me Maryland.
All right, so we'll disagree there. All right, we'll go a little bit faster here. San Diego State, Charleston, and this is a popular upset pick. I'm going to go with them. Charleston's been ranked in top 25 this year. They've been probably the best mid-major. I like Charleston.
I like Charleston too. Even though San Diego State, I feel like they should deserve to go further, especially after being, kind of take it away from them, the 2020 chance. But give me Charleston.
All right, next game you have UVA and Furman. UVA probably the best team in ACC this year. Furman, SoCon champions, got their revenge on Chattanooga. Could be an upset. We've seen UVA be upset before. I'm not feeling it here, though. I think UVA can handle this one.
Even though, as you mentioned, UVA has one of the biggest upsets in college basketball history, but I think they can take care of business.
Bottom half of the South Regional, we have 6-seed Creighton and 11-seed NC State. Really interesting game here. Creighton's been up and down all year. NC State barely getting in. However, I do really like Creighton here. I think Creighton will take care of business.
Give me North Carolina State.
Nice, we disagree there. Next game, 3 versus 14, Baylor versus UC Santa Barbara. And this one here is an interesting game. One thing to note here about Baylor is they have a top 10 offense, but their defense is ranked below 100th on KenPom. So that's something to give positive. And those teams tend to be very vulnerable in the tournament. I actually like UC Santa Barbara to pull off an upset here.
I'm going to be a little more conservative. Give me Baylor.
Here's a team that I've seen it in person in the next game, Missouri. Of course, they beat Tennessee on a buzzer beater back in Knoxville, and they beat them again last week. Made it to the semis before giving Alabama a tough game before falling to them. They play Utah State, a really good mid-major this year. Missouri, they have a questionable defense, but that offense is really, really good. I think they're clicking on all cylinders. Give me Missouri to move on to the next round.
Yeah, give me the Tigers.
Here we have our Ivy League representative, Princeton, the 15-seed, taking on 2-seed Arizona, one of the most consistent teams this year in the entire country. I mean, I could see this being close. Ivy League schools always feel like they play a team close. or perhaps pull an upset from time to time. I do like Arizona though.
Yeah, I think Arizona. Yeah, give me Arizona too.
All right, heading down to the East. So right now, Purdue will play the winner of Texas A&M and Farley Dickinson, or Texas Southern rather. Right now it looks like it's going to be Farley Dickinson. So Purdue versus Farley Dickinson. Let's just say I'm going Purdue.
I think I'm gonna do Purdue too.
Yeah. Now this one, probably one of the best games of the first round. Memphis and Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic's been. Excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, thank you. We have Memphis want to run. They upset Houston in the first round in the American title game versus Florida Atlantic. Who do we have here?
Give me Penny Hardaway, Memphis.
I agree. I am going with Memphis too, but I think it'll be a great game. All right. Here might be the most exciting game to me in the first round. Duke and Oral Roberts. I love this game. Oral Roberts went to the Sweet 16 a few years ago. They pretty much have that same team. Max Abrams leading them versus a resurgent Duke team. I'm going Oral. I think Oral Roberts is going to find a way to do it again.
Give me Duke. Duke kind of has a Tar Heels feeling of last year. Remember, North Carolina was a lower seed, had a rookie head coach, went all the way to the national championship. So I think I get the same vibes from Duke.
I mean, certainly. And no matter who it is, for our Tennessee Volunteers, it's certainly going to be a tough road. And just for a second here, while we reach the Vols, they're coming off a quarterfinal loss in the SEC tournament to Missouri. And just looking at the top half of this bracket here, we might be facing a situation where we have to play Duke in the second round. You get past them, Memphis or Purdue, which both have demons for Tennessee. And then you have Kentucky in that bottom half. I mean, it feels like if the Vols are ever going to make the Final Four, you're going to have to extinguish all the demons of the past.
I think this year for Vols is like all or nothing. Or you go all the way to the national championship, or you're going to be eliminated in the second round. And just a quick side note, I'm watching the Brazilian Cup game between Ipiranga and Bragantino. And the Ipiranga team kind of remind me, the way they got into the stadium kind of remind me of the Vol Walk. They literally, the players literally went on the street, walking through the fans to get into the stadium. It really reminded me of the Vol Walk. It's kind of like, it's very cool and all. But in terms of the March Madness, give me Tennessee. I think Tennessee, I think they can struggle a little bit as they've been doing recently, especially a team that is going to be more conservative. But give me the Vols.
Yeah, I think for Louisiana, this is a team that struggles a bit on defense. They're really good at rebounding. They have one dude, he's a forward, I forget his name. He's averaging over 20 a game, so that could be an issue. But Tennessee usually is really good on defense. We just got to be able to score consistently on offense, and I think this game should be a good one for us to do that in. I'll pick us to avoid the first round upset, and we'll get back to them a little bit later. Although Seth Davis believes we're going to lose first round, so Vols at least prove Seth Davis wrong here on the first round. All right. Now, speaking of demons, I think a single team with the most pressure on them in this entire tournament is Kentucky and Coach Cal. That 6 seed game against 11 seed Providence. If Coach Cal loses to Providence, I think it's the beginning of the end.
It's not going to be as worse as they were when they were eliminated in the first round. I believe it was a couple of years ago. I think they were a higher seed. I don't remember who they played.
Last year it was to St. Peter's as a 2 seed.
Yeah. So if they are eliminated, I guess it's not going to be as big as upset as last year, but still, give me the Wildcats. I think they're going to avoid it, but I think it's going to be really close. And And you mentioned Vols being upset in the first round. I think the last time that happened was 2 years ago, right? When they lost to Oregon State on that horrendous Friday afternoon game. I remember one of the most memorable games in the, no, memorable, not memorable game, but like one of the games I never will forget. How Vols played so terribly, and I remember talking to Josiah James and Coach Barnes after the game, and I remember, asking them about the message because nobody believed that team was going to be eliminated in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, it was a depressing ending, but that team, frankly, that was the ending that was coming from a mile away for that team, just because they really struggled offensively. And what's going on with this Tennessee team? They really struggle offensively. So, you know, hopefully Louisiana is not Oregon State, but I'll say this: I wouldn't be 100% shocked if Louisiana finds a way to pull it off. It's just being honest here. But hopefully they can at least get past Louisiana. But on Kentucky, Providence actually has a pretty good offense. Kentucky, kind of like Tennessee, they've struggled on offense some. And last week they got, ran out one. They were 1 and done in the SEC tournament against Vanderbilt. I feel like this is the beginning of the end for Coach Cal. I'm picking Providence.
Ooh.
I am picking the Friars to pull it off. All right, next game we have Kansas State and Montana State. Kansas State's been one of the best surprises of this entire year. Jerome Tang, first-year head coach, been just balling it out up there in Manhattan, Kansas. I think K-State will take care of business here in round 1.
Oh, definitely. If you can give me the Wildcats, especially that I like Montana, University of Montana better than Montana State, especially that, the rivalry that they have, especially my uncle being alma mater from the University of Montana. So give me the Wildcats.
Yeah. So here, an interesting game here. So you have Michigan State, the 7 seed, taking on 10 seed USC. Future Big Ten matchup here. It's a tough one, but it's hard to bet against Tom Izzo in March. It really is. When it's 50-50 like this, I'm going to err on the side of Michigan State.
I was going to make the same argument as you did. I think Tom Izzo is a very knowledgeable coach in terms of March Madness, and I think even as this matchup is, and since there's a little bit more home side to the Spartans since the game is in Ohio, give me Michigan State.
All right. Here's an interesting one. We have 2 seed Marquette. This is their highest seed they've had, I think, in like 40 years, versus 15 seed Vermont. Vermont, they've pulled out upsets in the past. They're from that same league that UMBC is in. And Shaka Smart is notoriously terrible at March. He might even be worse than Rick Barnes is. He didn't even win a single NCAA tournament game at Texas. Give me the Catamounts. I like Vermont to pull off a 15 seed upset over Marquette.
We both agree on that one. I think Bernie Sanders is going to be really happy. Give me Vermont.
Bernie or bust there for the Vermont.
Bernie or bust. I like that. Bernie or bust.
For Vermont. We're both fading the Golden Eagles of Marquette. All right, down to the Midwest Regional. We have Houston, the Cougars, number 1 seed versus 16 seed Northern Kentucky. I'll say this. I think Houston, obviously they're really strong defensively. I'm still not sold on them as a national title threat, but I think they'll take care of Northern Kentucky here in the first round.
I mean, the expectations are really high for the Cougars because they're the number 1 seed, and you have to remember the Final Four is going to be in Houston, so there's a big pressure for the Cougars to make it to the Final Four because it's going to be a home field environment. So give me Houston, but I don't know how deep they're going to go to the tournament, especially because of that pressure.
Right. And here's to me, Iowa, Auburn. These are 2 teams that have struggled at times this year, but they have talent. Of course, this game's in Birmingham, so it's going to be a pro-Auburn crowd. And to me, that I think is going to be the difference in this game. And Iowa, they're just notoriously chokers in March. Fran McCaffrey, his teams always seem to find ways to lose these tournament games. I'm going with Auburn.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Tigers too. I think the home field environment makes a difference. Give me the Auburn Tigers.
Going into our 5-12 here, I believe I've picked 2-12 so far. Of course, 5-12s are a popular upset. And I think in the last 40 games, 5 seeds are only 21 and 19 against 12 seeds. So this is basically a 50-50 proposition. Which you have Miami went into the semis with the ACC title game. And then you have Drake of the Missouri Valley. Man, this is tough. Because I want to pull the trigger again on another upset. I'm going to go Miami. Just because not every single one of these games can be an upset. I think it'll be a great game. I think it'll be a close game. But I like Miami.
Give me the upset. Give me Drake.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. But I feel like Drake's going to get it. I feel like Miami can pull that out. This down here. So we have Indiana and Kent State. So Kent State won the MAC versus Indiana. One of the best players in the entire country, Trace Jackson Davis. I think this tournament is an opportunity, a big opportunity for the Indiana Hoosiers. They need a deep tournament run to really reestablish themselves as a basketball power. I think they get off to a good start here. I like the Hoosiers to advance.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Hoosiers too.
Excuse me. Moving down to Iowa State and Pittsburgh. This is the Johnny Majors Classic 2.0. Johnny Majors coached at both of these schools before he came back to Tennessee. In football, Pittsburgh got their first tournament win last night by 1 point against Mississippi State. Heartbreak for the Bulldogs. But neither one of those teams really could shoot really well. I think Iowa State is much better than these teams. Iowa State had some huge wins in the Big 12. I like the Cyclones to move on.
I think they're on a roll. They just eliminated a really interesting team. So give me upset. Give me Pittsburgh.
I think it'll be a good game. That certainly could happen. Any of these upsets could happen, as I said beforehand. So we have the free 14 here. You have Xavier versus first-time participant just right down the road from Kennesaw State, the A-Sun. I mean, Xavier has a really good offense. I really think Kennesaw State, I think they're going to try to keep this close for a while. I like the Musketeers to move on.
I'm going to go with Kennesaw State. I think it's going to be the double upset. I'm going to be bold.
Yeah, I would love it if they pull it off. All right, so here's perhaps
it's a beautiful campus.
Oh, absolutely. You're right there off the interstate. The Owls, can they go hooty hoot against the Musketeers? I think here's the most interesting 2-game bracket right here because of what the matchup could potentially be. So first in the 7-10, we have Texas A&M, who first and foremost, severely underseeded. They should be way higher than a 7 seed. They should be at least a 5. The fact they're a 7 seed is so disrespectful. The SEC had 8 teams in the tournament this year, and they were second in the conference, and yet they only get a 7 seed. It's just ridiculous. Makes no sense.
And they went toe-to-toe regular season and the SEC championship to the number 1 seed Alabama. So they should be, I guess, 4 or at least 5 seed.
They literally have wins over both Alabama and Tennessee. I mean, what else did Texas A&M need to prove to get a higher seed? I mean, last year they were so disrespected they didn't even make the tournament when they should have made the tournament. So A&M clearly they need to go on a run to prove something. And I think A&M's going to come out in this game with something to prove. I mean, Penn State obviously had a really good Big Ten tournament run. They made it to the championship. I think A&M's just better. I like the Aggies to pull this off.
Give me Aggies too.
Here's an interesting one. So you have the Longhorns of Texas. They went for a midseason coaching change, but they haven't missed a beat. versus what we like to affectionately call toothpaste. It's Colgate again. Of course, Colgate put the fear of God in Tennessee back in 2019 when we were tied with them with 5 minutes left to go. So you don't underestimate Colgate. I do think, though, that Texas will make it by them, but don't be surprised if Colgate hangs with them, because in Tennessee, we know all about how scary Colgate can be.
Give me the Longhorns. I think it's going to be a Texas Derby.
Yeah, we're going to get to that here in a little bit, because that could be the most exciting game of the entire tournament if that comes true. Last region of the first round, we have the West. You have Kansas and Howard. Howard, first time in the tournament for over 30 years. Kansas, defending national champion. I mean, nice story for Howard. I think Kansas is going to roll.
Give me the Jayhawks.
Yeah.
My best friend's alma mater, too, Italo Costa.
Yeah. Our chief meteorologist at our station, his alma mater as well. So he's a big Jayhawk. Arkansas, number 8 seed. SEC, I think one of the most disappointing teams in the entire country this year, to be honest. They were preseason top 10. They've struggled significantly versus the 9th seed Illinois fighting the Illini. Not as good as they were last year, but I really like Illinois here. I just don't think Arkansas has been very good.
Give me Illinois.
Moving down to the 5-12, we have St. Mary's and VCU. St. Mary's at times this year were the best team in their conference. They were outplaying Gonzaga. I think they're really due for a big run here. I like St. Mary's.
I like St. Mary's too.
All right, here's an interesting one. So you have UConn, the Huskies, at one point a top 5 team, but they kind of lost some games. They're similar to Tennessee. And they're playing Rick Pitino's Iona Gales. Iona has not lost a game since January, and I think they're going to keep it going. I like Iona to move on. You're upset UConn.
I'm going to go conservative, even though Rick Pitino knows the tournament, won the tournament despite what the NCAA took it away from him. He left the trophy, but I think it's going to be the Huskies. Give me UConn.
Yeah, as we all know, Louisville won the 2013 national title, no matter what the NCAA tries to tell you. This is 6-11, of course. This is kind of the annoyance of doing these brackets now with the first 4. So first we have to guess who's winning tonight, and this game is about to start here in about an hour or so. There's only 4 minutes left of Farley Dickinson, Texas Southern. Farley Dickinson's up by 22, so they're going to move on to play Purdue. Who's winning tonight between Arizona State and Nevada?
Give me Nevada.
I'm going to go Arizona State. I think Arizona State, they pulled off a big one against Arizona a few weeks ago, and that was huge in getting them in the tournament. Nevada, I think it was questionable for them to be here in the first place. So I like Arizona State to move on. So either way, so you have Nevada versus TCU. I have Arizona State versus TCU. Who would you have in the next round?
I picked Texas Christian University.
Because it seems like always one of these first 4 teams pulls off a second upset. I like Arizona State. I like the Sun Devils to pull off another upset of TCU to move on to the second round. So I have the 11 seed. Obviously, we'll know in a few hours if they move on anyway to the next round. And they'll face either Gonzaga or Grand Canyon. This is not the best Gonzaga team that we've seen, but they do have some good wins, including one over Kentucky and Alabama. You have Grand Canyon. So I'm going with Gonzaga.
I'm going with Zags, too.
Yeah, they tend to avoid these early upsets. All right, down here in the last 2 matchups, one of the best stories in all college basketball this year, Northwestern finished 2nd in the Big Ten this year. 7 seed versus 10 seed Boise State. Boise State's kind of limping into the is kind of limping into this tournament. They've lost 3 out of 5. But Northwestern, they also lost in the first round of their tournament. I like Boise State here. It's on the West Coast. It feels like Northwestern has had a Cinderella season, but I like Boise State to pull off a win.
Give me Boise State too.
Right, we're both on the Broncos. Last game, we have 2-seed UCLA versus 15-seed UNC Asheville. I can't wait to watch this one in particular because our old friend Drew Pember from Tennessee, the leading scorer in all of college basketball for the UNC Asheville Bulldogs, averaging 21.2 points per game. Can Drew Pember knock off UCLA?
Yes, it's gonna be the biggest upset of the tournament because they're playing practically on the road because the game is in Sacramento, which is it's gonna be a home crowd for the Bruins. But give me the biggest upset. Give me UNC Asheville.
It's going to be a tight one. I think UCLA, though, finds a way. They've been the best team in the Pac-12, although they did lose one of their starting guards. So they could pull it off. It's going to be interesting. All right, on to the round of 32. And I don't know, have you been keeping track of your picks?
Oh, yeah. Mine's going to be Alabama and Maryland.
All right, so who do you have in that?
I have Bama. Give me Crimson Tide.
All right. I have Alabama versus West Virginia. I think this would be a kind of an interesting game, but I think Bama will advance to the Sweet 16. All right. I have Charleston versus UVA.
Me
what
too.
Do you have?
UVA.
I've got UVA too. I think UVA will move on. I have Creighton versus UC Santa Barbara. What do you have here?
I have literally the opposite of you. I have NC State, Baylor, and I think it's going to be a really close game, but I think Baylor's going to advance.
I have Creighton. I'm going to have Creighton knocking off UC Santa Barbara to go to the Sweet 16. All right. I have Missouri, Arizona. Do you also have Missouri, Arizona?
I believe so, and give me the Tigers.
I agree. I'm going Missouri as well. I love their offense right now. I love Dennis Gates' system. Give me Missouri to the Sweet 16. I have Purdue and Memphis. I think you do too.
Yes. Give me the Tigers.
I actually agree. I'm going with Memphis. All right. Now for the money swap. We have Oral Roberts in Tennessee for me, and I guess you have Duke in Tennessee.
This is the hardest one because I want Tennessee to face it. Because if Tennessee faces Memphis, is it going to be one of the most heated game between those two schools ever? Even though a few years ago, they play as a number 1 and number 2 ranked teams, but meeting up in the tournament, that's a whole nother level.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever met in the NCAA tournament. That would just be unbelievable. So I have them against Oral Roberts. That's a terrifying matchup. Oral Roberts could 100% beat Tennessee. However, I would trust that one of our top ranked defense, we have the second ranked defense on KenPom, has carried us throughout this entire season. We'll find a way with our size and athleticism to do enough against Oral Roberts. So I'm going to advance Tennessee past Oral Roberts, perhaps foolishly.
I also going to make it rationally. I would have picked Duke, but since I want this Tennessee-Memphis matchup to happen so bad, I'm going to make it happen in my bracket. Go Vols.
We are on.
Oh, and think about this.
The orange Kool-Aid, baby. Let's drink it.
And think about this. This game is going to be at Madison Square Garden. So the Garden, the Mecca of basketball, is going to host one of the biggest rivalries in the Southeast in college basketball. Can't get any bigger than that.
I can only imagine the migraine that game would give me if that happens.
And this time, Penny Hardaway cannot run away from it.
Or okay, even if Purdue were to upset Memphis, or Purdue were to beat Memphis, Tennessee Purdue would still be massive for the Vols. I mean, because of all the demons we have against them, both not just in basketball but in football. Like we literally got stolen a game from them in football. We got stolen a game against them in basketball. Like obviously Memphis ran away from us a few years ago. This the storylines potentially there in the Sweet 16 if we can somehow survive Duke and Oral Roberts.
No, and like even with Duke, it's we're gonna eliminate a blue blood, so it's not the storyline is Tennessee already making to the Sweet 16, eliminating a blue blood.
Yeah, and think about it, last year, we played Michigan a blue blood and they knocked us out. Yeah, we were the favorites and we didn't answer the bell when it was wrong. And as I said, this whole tournament for Tennessee is about extinguishing demons, and we don't have Sakai Ziegler, so we're coming in at a disadvantage. But there's talent on this team. There's guys like Josiah Jordan-James, against Missouri last week, had 3 points against Missouri. That can't happen in this tournament. If that happens again, pack it up because it's done. Olivier Kamwa, we need him to step up. We need Euros to step up.
Santi.
Yeah, Santi has to be that guy, though. Santi, we need 15-20 at least. We need Tyreek Key to show up.
I wish I could make. I want to beg Santiago Vescovi right now to embrace the Uruguayan spirit in the March Madness. Be tough. Be provocative. Embrace the Libertadores spirit, Santi. Like Uruguayans are great on that. Embracing that kind of toughness in playoffs. That's the thing that we Brazilians admire in Uruguayan soccer players.
Yeah, that, and that's just the whole thing. I believe this team is tough. They've played great defense all year. It's not a matter of toughness. I question with this team, it's their ability when the ball isn't going down the rim. Can you find a way to change that? And they've been in multiple situations this year where they haven't been able to change that. And I have to hope that maybe this is the tournament where the stars align. But I think foolishly, I'm talking myself into it. But I'll stick with my bracket for now. I have them in the Sweet 16. But let's move on. We'll be back to Tennessee in a little bit. I have Providence versus Kansas State. I think you have Kentucky versus Kansas State. So who do you have going to the Sweet 16?
Give me the Wildcats. Oh, give me the Wildcats of the SEC. The SEC.
Yeah, because they're both Wildcats.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with Kansas State.
I realized that while I was finishing my sentence.
Yeah, so it could be an all Wildcat battle. Remember, Kansas State beat Kentucky in the Sweet 16 back in, I think it was 2018. So could be a potential revenge game there if Kentucky plays Kansas State for the Kentucky Wildcats. I have Michigan State and Vermont, and I think you do too, right? Michigan State, Vermont.
Yeah.
I like Izzo. I think Michigan State. Oh my! I just realized the whole storyline here too, but I'll save that for later. So I have Michigan State moving on to the Sweet 16 against Kansas State.
Me too. Give me the Spartans.
Oh, dude, you're not gonna believe the storyline here when we get to the end. I'm starting to believe now that this actually could be divine intervention. Oh, okay, we'll see. All right, next round we have Houston. I have Houston versus Auburn. I think you do too.
Yeah. I think that's the game that the pressure is going to mount. And, the game being in Alabama, give me the Tigers.
I agree. I love this upset in Birmingham. But Auburn hasn't been clean this year, but they play well in Alabama. I like Auburn a lot. And Bruce will find a way. Bruce is good in March. I have Miami and Indiana. I think you have Drake in Indiana.
Give me the Hoosiers.
I agree. I've got the Hoosiers as well. I have Iowa State and Xavier. I think you have the opposite, right? Pittsburgh and Kennesaw State.
I have the biggest upset, but the Cinderella story of the Owls end here. Give me the Pittsburgh.
I have Iowa State, the Cyclones, spinning their way to the Sweet 16, taking out Xavier. And then here's a game I really hope happens: Texas A&M versus Texas. Man, these two teams have been running away from each other for years. Of course, they're about to face each other again in the SEC in a few years. But the NCAA heads are forcing them together here. Who wins between the Aggies and the Longhorns?
Just a quick update in the Brazilian Cup. Ipiranga just scored. So the upset is happening in the Brazilian Cup. Bragantino, first division team, currently losing 1-0 on the road for the Brazilian Cup. But in terms of the college basketball, it's going to be a Texas Derby. And give me the Aggies.
I agree. I love the Aggies. I think the Aggies have something to prove. Here, they've been disrespected by the committee for 2 straight years. I think they got something to prove. I like A&M. All right, last bracket here, West. We have Kansas, Illinois. Who do you like?
Kansas.
Yeah. I got Kansas as well. I have St. Mary's and Iona. I think you have St. Mary's and UConn.
Yep.
I like the Gales to move on. Or actually, I think these are both the Gales, actually. St. Mary's Gales versus Iona Gales, which that would be an insane name matchup. But I like St. Mary's.
I like UConn.
All right, so we could get Kansas, Connecticut maybe in the Sweet 16 blue blood matchup there. I have Arizona State versus Gonzaga.
Give me TCU.
I like Gonzaga to move on. And I have Boise State versus UCLA. You have Boise State versus UNC Asheville.
Give me UNC Asheville. Drew Bemper is going to make a difference. Give me UNC Asheville.
Oh, wow. 15 seed UNC Asheville to Sweet 16. I like UCLA to move on to the Sweet 16. All right. So back up to the South. I have Alabama and Virginia.
Yeah, I think the Crimson Tide season comes to an end. Give me UVA.
Ooh. As much crap as I give Bama, I actually disagree. I like Alabama to move on to the Elite Eight right there. I think UVA, they're just too inconsistent for me. Plus, ACC was not very good.
And I'm going to eliminate another SEC team. Give me Baylor against Missouri.
I have Missouri versus Creighton. And you know what? I think the Tigers keep on rolling here. I like an all SEC Elite Eight there. Alabama versus Missouri. So that would be a pretty insane Elite Eight. In the East, we both have Memphis and Tennessee.
What a matchup.
Through Penny Hardaway.
What a matchup. What a matchup. Give me Tennessee. Rick Barnes needs this win so bad. Like, I think it would be devastating for Rick Barnes being eliminated in the Sweet 16 against the coach that I think he hates the most.
It would be. I mean, that would just be the most deflating loss imaginable. I mean, I don't know who I'd rather not lose to. I don't know if I'd rather lose to Purdue again or lose to Memphis. I think Memphis would be worse. I'm pretty sure. But you know what, though? I'm trusting our defense. Give me Tennessee.
Give me Tennessee, too.
All right. I've got Kansas State versus Michigan State. I don't know who you have.
Kentucky, Michigan State.
I think I know who you're going to go for here for the storyline.
Oh, I'm tempted. Even though Tom Izzo, I think, is going to give a hard time to Coach Cal, but for the storyline, give me Kentucky.
And I'll tell you this. Michigan State would also be I've got Michigan State knocking off Kansas State, and Do you know who the team was the one time Tennessee made the Elite Eight back in 2010 that Tennessee lost to in the Elite Eight?
Michigan State.
Yep. By 1 point. It was Michigan State that kept Tennessee away from the promised land. And now I have Tennessee and Michigan State in the Elite Eight. Why am I doing this to myself? Okay. Anyway, we'll get back to them later. Midwest. I've got Auburn and Indiana. Who do we like here?
The not a Cinderella, but I think another SC team season comes to an end. Give me Hoosiers.
I agree. I like Indiana there over Auburn. I think Trace Jackson Davis is going to make himself into a star in this tournament.
Especially because the game's in Kansas City, so I think it takes away the playing at home factor.
I agree. All right, so I have Iowa State, Texas A&M. What do you have here?
I have Pittsburgh, Texas A&M. Give me the Aggies.
I have the Aggies too. I think the Aggies knock off Iowa State. So we both have Aggies in the Elite Eight. So we clearly both respect A&M compared to the committee. In the final bracket, Kansas and St. Mary's. Well, that's my pick. What was yours? Kansas and UConn,
Kansas and UConn. Give me the Jayhawks.
I agree. I like the Jayhawks there too to go to the Elite Eight. I think would be another amazing rematch. Gonzaga, UCLA. It seems like anytime those two go head-to-head in the NCAA tournament, it's always a classic. You have back 2006, I believe. UCLA comes back with 17 down, makes Adam Morrison sob on the court, one of the most famous games ever. Then UCLA, and then a couple of years ago in the COVID season, Gonzaga hits a game-winning three in overtime to win. Just one of the best games ever. Of course, they would go on to get dragged 2 days later. I think, though, in a rubber match, I think Gonzaga finds a way to move on. And for you, I think it's Gonzaga and UNC Asheville, right?
No, it's TCU, UNC Asheville. And then the Cinderella story of Drew Pemper comes to an end. Give me TCU.
Wow, imagine the Horned Frogs made the national title in football, and now you have them in the Elite Eight. Quite a season for the Horned Frogs. All right. I've got in my first Elite Eight quarterfinal, I have Alabama, Missouri. At SEC semifinal this last week, and I think Missouri, a great Cinderella story, but I do think Alabama goes to the Final Four.
For me, is ACC Big 12 matchup, and give me UVA.
And who are they? Baylor, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you have Virginia. I have Alabama. Now I have Tennessee, Michigan State. You have Tennessee, Kentucky.
Oh, boy.
Are we really about to pick Tennessee in the Final Four? As bad as we've been the last month.
It's going to – hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it happens differently. But I think Rick Barnes' case has come to an end. I think Kentucky has been the kryptonite for the Vols this year. Give me the Wildcats.
Tennessee, Michigan State. Michigan State, great run. Obviously, for other reasons, they'll be motivated. I'm going to be honest, though, logically, I think Tennessee wins. I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm calling Tennessee in the Final Four against who else but Alabama.
Wow.
Could you have Alabama, Tennessee in the Final Four?
I mean, and if Tennessee wins this game, it will, I think it would revenge all the 15-year drought in football. I think that will.
So, a serious question here: would a Tennessee Alabama Final Four semifinal be bigger than the game last October? Would that be bigger?
I don't. There's reasons, yes, because it will be in a playoffs, in the Final Four, since Tennessee never made it. It will decide in semifinals in a national championship. But the last October game, it was important for the program as a whole. If Tennessee wins or loses, I think the program is not going to be impacted by that. But the football game in October, that victory, I think impacted the football program as a whole.
Yeah. If Tennessee beats Bama in the Final Four, do we storm Neyland Stadium again and throw another goalpost in the river? Or do we storm it at TBA and throw a
I was going to give that idea. They should do a watch party at TBA, and then if Tennessee wins this matchup, they should do that. Then they definitely have to do a watch party at TBA.
Man, I will be throwing up if Tennessee is playing Alabama in the Final Four. But anyway, we got to pick the other matchup. I have Indiana versus A&M. I think you do as well. So I'm going with the Hoosiers. I think this is the year for the Indiana Hoosiers to ascend back into basketball royalty. Indiana back to the Final Four.
Me too. Give me the Hoosiers.
My final matchup, we got Kansas and Gonzaga. This would be the most traditional matchup in the Elite Eight. I don't know. You have Kansas and TCU. I think the Zags go home disappointed again. I like the Jayhawks to go back to the Final Four.
Jayhawks back to the Final Four too.
All right. Final Four. Okay, let's pick the other matchup first. Well, actually, I'll pick. So I have the third. It'd be the first Saturday in April. The Final Four Saturday in April. Alabama, Tennessee. I do have to be honest, though. I know we beat them in Knoxville, but I think the run would come to an end here. I think Bama would move on to play in the national championship.
Imagine the storyline. Again, imagine the storyline. Alabama football does not make the college football playoffs, and the college basketball team makes it the national championship. Wow.
Yeah. And then what if it's Tennessee standing in their way? That would be just unbelievable. Man, and just imagine too, if we get all that way, like we've avoided the early upset. We somehow get through Oral Roberts or Duke. Let's say we get through Purdue or Memphis, avenge one of those teams, get through Michigan State or Kentucky in the bottom, just to all get to Bama and then lose. I mean, still that would be an incredible run. Obviously, a Final Four is something I've always dreamed about for this program. So I would still be happy with that run, but man. So you have who do you have up here? You have was it Virginia and
Kentucky? I think the UVA is going to go again to another national championship, and Coach Cal's season is going to come to an end.
Yeah. Hey, if they make a Final Four, though, that would give Coach Cal a lot more time. That is something he desperately needs for his future. So in the bottom, we have both Indiana and Kansas on this side. Who is going?
I mean, by the way, you talk about traditional teams, traditional matchups. This is one of the most blue bloods college basketball games it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, my Final Four would be the most mismatched ever because you would have a traditional football rivalry in one Final Four, and you would have the traditional basketball head-to-head. I like Kansas. I think Kansas would win.
Give me the Jayhawks too.
All right, so my championship, I have Alabama versus Kansas, and you have Virginia versus Kansas. Who is your national champion?
I think it's going to be a back-to-back. No, actually, UVA. Give me UVA. And I give the score is going to be 79-74.
Yeah, it's the storyline here. Obviously, Alabama fighting through all the off the court controversy, make the national title game versus the back-to-back champion. I trust Kansas with their experience here. I'm going to go with the Jayhawks, and I'll go 75-68. So I have Kansas winning the national championship. You have Virginia winning the national championship. So, yeah. So I will say this: I have zero confidence in that bracket, but that is the bracket we're going to go with.
Yeah, that I was gonna say that's the bracket I'm going. That's the bracket I'm going.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that happens. I don't know. Is there any other thoughts on the woman on this men's side before we move on? Because we've definitely, I think, gone over pretty much everything. But I think I think the biggest things here, from the Vols' perspective, we're limping into this. A lot of people are not confident in the Vols heading into this tournament. I feel like it's the exact opposite of where we were last year, where I felt super confident about the Vols, and I know I just picked them to go to the Final Four. But that was almost just because of the craziness around them, almost a victim of circumstance, and because of just how narratively it would be. But this tournament is so big for Rick Barnes. He needs to find a way to make the Sweet 16 at least, or otherwise, the narrative about him being the round of 32 coach is going to be true. I hope that our boys dig deep down and they find a way.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is massive for a lot of not only Coach Barnes, but we mentioned Cal. I'm being very optimistic about Kansas, but they really need to make a deep run.
Yeah, I think Gonzaga too is another team that really needs a really deep run. Well, I think for Gonzaga, it's not just about deep runs. You got to find a win in a national championship because they've come close over and over and over again. And they always seem to find a way to come up short. Can Mark Few finally get himself a national championship? That's to a question that will need to be answered. And also, too, I think, when you look at Alabama, look at Houston, how real are those teams? How real are you? We're going to find out all of those questions for the next few days. We'll definitely have a recap of the first two rounds next week. And also, too, don't want to forget about the women's side. And I don't think we're going to go let's not go game by game like we did on the men's side, just because it takes forever to do one of these. But I do think the women's side does have some interesting games as well. I think the number one interesting thing to me is that the Lady Vols actually get to host. That their win against LSU last week was enough to bump them up in the top 16. And I think that win for Kelly Harper was just so big to set the Lady Vols up, maybe for a run.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a. I think I think you should be optimistic about it. That's true.
Absolutely. So I'll just go ahead and tell you, because I did a bracket on the side for the women's. So some notable things here. I have the Lady Vols going to the Elite Eight. I think they find a way to upset Virginia Tech in the Sweet 16 before falling to UConn in the Elite Eight. I do have South Carolina winning it all. I think they have them. I think they'll finish undefeated. I think the team that's most dangerous to them this entire tournament is Iowa. I said this last week. Caitlin Clark is the best player in the country. And if she gets really hot against South Carolina, Iowa could take them out. But that's going to be really difficult. Of course, UConn is still a big threat to them. But I only think there's a handful of teams that have a chance to take out South Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I'm interested to see how deep this women's team can go, because again, Tennessee, I think hosting is going to be a big deal. I think they have to do really good in Knoxville. especially they're gonna face St. Louis and Iowa State, which are not big traditional programs, but then they might face Virginia Tech, the number one seed. Ohio State might be on their way, so who knows how deep they can make it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think I don't know if I would say Sweet 16 is the expectation, but I think that would be definitely at least the hope, especially hosting. That you want to at least make that Sweet 16, and then find a way to go beyond there. So we'll see what the Lady Vols can do. I've got South Carolina winning it all, unless a major upset happens. Kind of feels like we were where we were a few years ago, where UConn was winning it every single year. So hopefully someone can balance that side of the bracket. Anyway, some quick other college basketball news. Some hires have been made recently that I think are kind of controversial. First, Ole Miss hires Chris Beard, the former coach at Texas, got fired for a domestic assault charge. He was acquitted. So now the Ole Miss Rebels are bringing him in to try to fix their basketball program. Also, McNeese State in the Southland Conference, they've made some tournaments in the past couple of years, bringing back Will Wade. And he's going to be suspended for a couple of games to start off his tenure. I mean, my question to you is, how problematic are these hires?
First of all, Ole Miss is getting really interesting. I mean, Ole Miss is known for being risky in terms of hires, but definitely I was not expecting Will Wade to come back this soon to the college basketball world.
Right. Well, Will Wade went to McNeese State. Chris Beard is the one going to Ole Miss. And, I think it's kind of ironic because, Ole Miss just a few years ago fired Hugh Freeze for, scandalous actions, with prostitutes. And now they're turning around and hiring Chris Beard, who allegedly beat his girlfriend / wife, I know he was acquitted, but still, that's going to come up on the recruiting trail. That's going to come up behind closed doors, and I know he's going to be on a tight leash. So, I mean, I understand, when you look at Chris Beard as a basketball coach, he took Texas Tech to the national championship game. He had Texas rolling this year before he got fired. So we know he can coach basketball, but how is that going to play in Mississippi? I'll be interested to see. Will Wade, I'll be curious to see if he can rebuild his brand back to the point where he can get a major job. We've seen how bad LSU was this year. They're the worst team in the SEC. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino gets fired at Arkansas for being with his assistant, being on a motorcycle with his assistant. He ends up going to Western Kentucky, rebuilds his brand to get back to Louisville. I think Will Wade's very similar to that. And he's a good enough basketball coach where I think he's going to get himself back on top. But can he do it cleanly? I don't know. So it's certainly I'm interested to watch those two coaches next year.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm interested to see more about Will Wade because he's as controversial as it is. He's capable of building a program, but you point out great. Is he capable of doing cleanly?
Right. If it gets investigated by the FBI again, then we have problems. So I think your goal number one, if you're Will Wade, do not get President Biden on you. That's your number one goal. Keep Joe Biden away from McNeese State. All right, so unless there's something else you want to point out about basketball, it is time to switch it up.
I just one thing I want to point out: the NBA Milwaukee Bucks are already in the playoffs. No surprise, I guess.
Yeah. Also, and just on NBA note too, John Morant suspended 8 games for that gun incident in Denver. Should be back in time for the playoffs. So we'll see if that affects him mentally heading into that. But I suspect he's going to be fine. And we'll see if Memphis can take advantage of this break they've received.
Yeah, and I guess Memphis is fine. They're the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. I guess they're going to be in. The thing is how deep this team can go. And the Lakers are in. As crazy as it is, the Lakers are in the play-in. I mean, can LeBron take this team to the playoffs. They won 7 out of the last 10 games.
But isn't LeBron still out right now, or is he
No, I
back?
mean even though they are no, I'm saying even though LeBron is out, do you think if the team stays the number 10 seed, can LeBron come back and bring this team to deeper run in the playoffs?
I mean, it's certainly possible. You know what's interesting? When you look at 4 through about 12, it's only separated by 4 games. Like, and what's really, I think, surprising right now, the Dallas Mavericks, 3-7 in their last 10. The Kyrie and Luka experiment is not working.
I
Like, they're
mean,
scoring points, but they can't defend.
I mean, they were going through a good path. They won 7 straight, but then now they lost 3 straight.
Yeah, it's really concerning when you think about it, because it really just makes me think that that pair just isn't going to work as a championship duo, especially when you got teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder ahead of you. Of course, Oklahoma City, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, probably the most underrated player in the entire league this year. But anyway, but the team that still is just hanging out up there at the 3 seed above the fray is the Sacramento Kings. I mean, it's just so good to see them back in the playoffs because that fan base deserves it.
It's been 20 years. That's 21 years since the infamous run in the Western Conference Final.
Oh, yeah. They definitely deserve it. By the way, Arizona State and Nevada, I believe, are just about to begin in Dayton, Ohio. Of course, the winner goes on to play TCU. So definitely be monitoring that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays the next couple of weeks in the West. I did watch a little bit of the end of the Suns-Bucks. And I'll say this, when it comes to the Suns, at least the part I watched the last couple of minutes, Chris Paul was just atrocious. He missed like 5 straight shots. Dude was not hitting his floaters, missing open 3-pointers. And I just, and everyone in the TikTok shack I was watching him was just calling him CP0. Chris Paul, kind of one of those players that once again, when they make the playoffs this year, has to defeat a narrative that he disappears in the playoffs. Because he disappeared in that game.
Yeah, there's a lot of expectations from this Phoenix team. Can CP3 or CP0 or Chris Paul and Kevin Durant it's so funny. Can Durant do for Chris Paul what Stephen Curry did for Kevin Durant?
Well, I mean, Kevin Durant is out now for a couple of weeks too, so we're gonna have to wait a couple of games to see that in action. And you could tell the Suns really, really needed KD last night. But I think with KD, the Suns are actually really, really potent, but he's got to be healthy. So hopefully, here in the next few weeks, get both LeBron and KD back, and we can have a fully star-studded playoffs. Because I don't want to see any of these teams with any excuses. So it's going to be a fun end of the season here for the NBA. All right, let's talk some football, because today was certainly a day in the football world. If you're one of over the it might have gone up to 500,000 at one point. One of the nearly 500,000 people who tuned into the Pat McAfee show. You know already what went down, but in case you decided not to tune in, Aaron Rodgers made one of his appearances, like he always does, on the Pat McAfee show, and he went on a soliloquy. He talked about how the Packers have done him wrong, how they drafted Jordan Love to replace me, and I'm sorry, I can't get through this without laughing. It's like it was just so absurd because he talks about going on to his darkness retreat for 5 days and 4 nights.
Do you know what this Pat McAfee moment with Aaron Rodgers remind me? It was like a girl or a guy who is the toxic one in the relationship, goes away for Vegas with the guys or the girls, and then all weekend complain about how my boyfriend or girlfriend are this, and that, and I'm gonna move on, and I already have, I'm already talking to another guy or girl. This is exactly what it is. Green Bay Packers need to move on. If they drafted Jordan Love, and clearly that hurt Aaron Rodgers, now it's like, we trust you. You're ready for it. Go all in or nothing. But you have to move on from this relationship. And I was thinking about that one while I was listening to the Pat McAfee show. This Aaron Rodgers decision, do you think he wants to do the same path as Brett Favre? How he, because like when Brett Favre went to the Jets in 2008, he also had to deal with an surging uh, dynasty with the Patriots. Now it's the Bills. But back then, the Bills and Miami, they were relevant. They were good as like the Dolphins and the Patriots were. So I don't know how much Aaron Rodgers can, improve the Jets to be the top division. They're going to be fighting for a wild card, as the Jets did this year.
My whole question about him in New York. New York has a talent. You got Brees Hall at running back. You've got Garrett Wilson out there, receiver, Corey Davis. They have really good talent. And they do have to do some work at the O-line. But clearly, Aaron Rodgers is an upgrade at quarterback for New York. There's no question about that. He's better than Zach Wilson, better than Joe Flacco. Even though he has the same amount of rings as Joe Flacco. Man, that's funny to say. But because think about it, Joe Flacco won the ring.
It's surreal to say that Joe Flacco has the same amount of rings as Aaron Rodgers, even though both had talent, but clearly Aaron Rodgers is most talented one between the two, but both ended up with the same number of rings as of right now.
Yeah, and also he'll have defensive support. He's got like Sauce Gardner and just a whole load of crew on that side. Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams in Seattle. Never mind. So I forget I said that. That was a brain fart. My only thing with him, can he be selflessness enough? Can he be selfless? Because Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay, was selfless. He gave up money and that allowed Tampa Bay to build a really good roster around him, and they were able to win a ring because of it. Is he willing to do that? Because think about Aaron Rodgers. We know how much he loves that limelight. He literally had 500,000 people watching a YouTube show today, all about him. And now going to New York City, are we sure that when he gets there, it's going to be about the Jets, and it's not going to be about Aaron Rodgers? That's my question. And here's the thing. If he goes out there and he stings, the Jets fans will let him know. The Jets fans don't mess around. No?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's either it's going to be a Brady or Russell Wilson situation. But I don't think the Jets fans are going to be as patient as the Broncos fans. I think they're going to, because this franchise has not been to the playoffs in 20 years. 20 years without going to the playoffs.
The Jets went, it's been like what? 8 years,
20
right?
years. What?
It's not been 20 years. It's not been 20 years.
Oh, no, 10 years. 10 years. I'm sorry. 12 years. 12 years. 12. Sorry,
okay,
12.
I remember them making the AFC title game like in 2009.
Back to back. They made back. I was thinking, I don't know why I thought today was 2013, not 2023. But so I think this, but still, a decade without going to the playoffs. It's a lot of expectations if Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, though, I still think they're only the third best team in their division. Like, I think the Bills are better. I still think, honestly, if Tua's healthy, the Dolphins are better. And the Patriots are going to cause some problems, too. So, I'm very skeptical of Aaron Rodgers in New York. But then again, it reminds me a few years ago, I was really skeptical about Tom Brady in Tampa, and Tom Brady went on to win the Super Bowl. So
Who picked Tampa to win the Super Bowl?
you did. And then last year, I remember I was really excited about Russell Wilson going to Denver, and that was a disaster. So maybe I'm wrong again, and Aaron Rodgers will be phenomenal in New York. But you just never know. And clearly, his tenure in New York will be massive for his legacy. Because he needs to do very well in New York. Or otherwise, his legacy takes a nosedive because of all this off the field antics. You have to prove it. You have to prove that you are worth dealing with all the antics.
Do you know it's going to be the most Do you know it's going to be the big who's going to have the biggest vindication of all if Aaron Rodgers fails in New York?
Brett Favre. Brett Favre.
Not only Brett Favre, but Mike McCarthy.
That would be quite interesting. You know, I think Mike McCarthy is going to be fighting for his own legacy next year.
Imagine if it's going to be a Super Bowl between Dallas Cowboys and the New York Jets.
Yeah, I mean the legacies that.
I mean, first of all, the media would imagine. I mean, whoever broadcasts this game is going to have the highest rating ever. You know, New York team versus Dallas, which is the biggest brand in football, and Aaron Rodgers versus his former coach.
Yeah, it's like if the Giants Cowboys had the NFC title game, But we'll have to wait and see. It is going to be really interesting. I think what was very interesting is his tactics of saying that the Packers are holding up the trade.
I think
that was.
Packers want to get the most value at this point, but the Jets. But the Jets are not in a hurry because the Jets are not the one who needs this trade to go well. It's the Packers because the Packers know that they cannot deal with this relationship anymore.
Oh, absolutely. And the question is, you get rid of Aaron Rodgers, do you stick with Jordan Love or do you try to do something else at quarterback? Do you trust Jordan Love to be your starter next year?
Or you do like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did, when you lose a big time quarterback.
Yeah, well, the Bucs today, they signed Baker Mayfield. The Saints are retaining Jameis Winston, but that type of quarterback now is basically off the market. Well, actually, I take that back. The Colts got rid of Matt Ryan, so he's free. Do you go sign Matt Ryan? Do you want Matt Ryan at this point?
I mean, if that happens, then Matt Ryan now is going to be a bridge quarterback like Teddy Bridgewater, like Baker Mayfield, like the one who played Mitch Trubisky or James Winston.
Yeah. I mean, definitely Matt Ryan's era as a star quarterback is over. So over. But Baker Mayfield, the Bucs, this one's interesting. Is he going to be a bridge quarterback at Tampa, or can he be a long-term solution?
I mean,
he's still relatively young.
I mean, first of all, that game that I think he beat the Raiders, right, when he first game as Rams, got that contract. That game got Baker Mayfield this chance.
Oh yeah, because he still proved that with the right pieces of good coaching, he's still a good quarterback. And I think he got screwed in Cleveland. Like Cleveland was just so toxic, and Carolina did not have a ton of talent around them. Tampa, though, could be a different story. So all I'm going to say is don't count out Baker in Tampa.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think Baker can do well. I think it's going to be probably a 9-8 or 8-9 quarterback, something like that.
Yeah. So in that respect, a bridge quarterback, but a decent bridge quarterback. like a Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah,
Which is
Tyrod Taylor.
Since Baker took over for Tyrod Taylor. And then also, too, if Jameis wants to stay with New Orleans, they have both Winston and Derek Carr. I mean, I would think, obviously, Carr will be the starter. But do you consider Winston at all? And then, obviously, the quarterback competition.
Ooh. I think at mid-season, Derek Carr is going to be the starter, but I think it's going to be a good competition. Coaches love quarterback competition because then we'll make it the offense better.
Right. And as we saw with the 49ers last year, you need multiple quarterbacks. Oh, yeah, I forgot to put on Jimmy Garoppolo to the Las Vegas Raiders.
That was a great fit. That was a great fit for both. Jimmy Garoppolo definitely time in San Francisco was, really close to get done. Everybody, at least it wasn't a petty divorce. It was a nice divorce. Jimmy Garoppolo definitely best attribute was the way that he handled the Trey Lance situation. Not being petty, understand that he was a backup, and the Raiders needed a kind of like a number one quarterback after losing Derek Carr.
Oh, yeah. And I think Jimmy G will be a bridge quarterback. And the problem is, Darren Waller is going to the Giants. So they're losing one of their top weapons. So really, after Devontae Adams, who else do they have? I mean, your top tight end now is Foster Moreau. Moreau, who's had some good games, but I don't know. The Raiders, I don't think are going to be very good this year. I think they're going to be tanking for a top draft pick. But the Giants, though, with that offense, they're starting to really build something kind of interesting. Although, as we talked about last week, I think they gave Daniel Jones a ridiculous contract. But
that was, I think, it was kind of like a similar contract of Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott did way better on his rookie contract than Daniel Jones. So
another interesting one too, Ezekiel Elliott released by the Cowboys. Who do you think may pick him up? Because obviously no one's going to sign him to a $90 million contract anymore, I would hope.
First of all, that's what, it's crazy. I remember when Zeke was all sorts of trouble and Jerry Jones embraced him, gave a big contract, and now releasing him is like, what a waste of cap space and money and foolish decision by Jones at the time.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a recurring theme with Jerry Jones.
Yeah. that's why Dallas is 20 30 almost 30 years not make it to an NFC championship. How can a team as big as a brand and the Dallas Cowboys stay 3 decades not going to NFC championship?
It's Jerry Jones. He's the problem.
It's like if Flamingo. It's like if Flamingo stay 30 years without getting to a close to win a Brazilian championship or a Brazilian Cup. That would have been ridiculous. The most popular team, one of the richest team, cannot make it past the and it's not like the NFC is loaded right now. The NFC is way weaker than the AFC.
Right. But I mean, Dallas at this point, they're going all in on a passing attack. I mean, you still got Tony Pollard. If you need to re-sign him, he should have been your RB1 to begin with last year. I was screaming about it all season last year about how Tony Pollard should be the starting running back. He's now going to be the starting running back, thankfully. But with CeeDee Lamb, there's potential they may pick like a Jalen Hyatt up in the draft, which could that they speed. They would have a running back that have probably the best stable of tight ends in the league. The Cowboys are going all in on the air raid, I think. And getting rid of Ezekiel Elliott is a big part of that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, but definitely, free agency is just beginning. We're going to have many more moves over the coming weeks. One that just broke a few minutes ago, James Robinson, former Jacksonville running back standout, going to the Patriots. So he could be an interesting piece in New England, an interesting fantasy piece for sure. Another big piece of NFL news, and I don't think this happened before our last show. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't talk about the Panthers that last week, did we?
No,
Getting the
no,
one
the trade, no.
Yeah, so it happened after our last show. So we now have a new number one pick, the Carolina Panthers. We talked about this before. The Houston Texans screwed around and beat Indianapolis for no reason in the last game. And they allowed Chicago to get that one pick. And we knew because they have a quarterback that they were likely going to trade out of it. And the Panthers are that team that they traded with. And I guess the question is now for Carolina, who are they going to pick? And the rumor is they are in love with Anthony Richardson. What do you think?
I mean, first of all, that was a move that showed that the Bears trust Justin Fields. They're giving a sign of, hey, we want you to be our number one quarterback, and we're going to find weapons for you. But the Panthers, they really going to go for a mobile quarterback that I guess is flashy but cannot be trusted?
Yeah, and it wasn't good in college. No. I mean, I can't believe that you would give up all those resources for a guy that was going to be there at 4.
I mean, this class of quarterback is a goodish average, but you're going to go for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud at least.
Yeah, I mean, those are the top 2. I mean, Bryce Young would be my number one pick. That's who I would pick with the first pick. I think he's the best quarterback in this class. He was the best quarterback out of these guys in college. I think he has what it takes. I know he's undersized. He's only 6 feet tall. But he's the smartest one. And last year, Alabama did not have the best stable of wide receivers. Like, he had to make up a lot of deficiencies on that Alabama roster and also had to overcome bad play calling by Bill O'Brien and was still really good. I would pick him. Go ahead.
Oh, Bill O'Brien, you're not you're not doing a good job when you cannot be efficient in the Saban's rehabilitation clinic.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien will never have to buy another beer in Knoxville, Tennessee for his contributions to his win last year. Thank you for not running on 3rd and 10 and giving us 15 seconds for Hendon Hooker to cook. So we'll never have to buy anything because he directly is responsible for Tennessee's win over Alabama.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just would be insane for the Panthers to pick Richardson. But if they do, then I think the Texans and the Colts become huge winners here because they had to give up nothing, and they'll be able to select one of the 2 quarterbacks you probably were going to select anyway. Because at first when I saw that news, I'm like, oh boy, the Texans and the Colts.
And do you think that's why Matt Ryan was released, because the Colts kind of are expecting to land CJ Stroud or Bryce Young?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the plan. Or I know there's been rumors that the Colts really like Will Levis too. But I think that's a mistake as well. See, here's the thing with Richardson and Levis. They're both GMs are hoping they turn into the next Josh Allen. That's the only reason why either one of these 2 quarterbacks are getting play. It's because Josh Allen has turned out to be really good, and every GM thinks they can find the next Josh Allen. I mean, that's just the fact. So, but I think the most proven ones, though, are Young and Stroud. And I think that's who the Texans and the Colts will pick. I think the interesting thing to me now at 3 is the Cardinals. And I would imagine they're going to stick with Kyler Murray for now. But I've seen other mocks where they pull the trigger for a quarterback? Or if they don't want to go quarterback here, do they trade down for another team that might want a quarterback? I think like the Tennessee Titans. I think they really need a quarterback, but they also need a lot of other positions too. But it may not be in our best interest this year to trade up because I think we're heading for a tank year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the number one pick next year project.
Yeah. Well, I'm going on record right now. The Tennessee Titans, with the number one pick in the 2024 NFL draft, select Joe Milton, quarterback, University of Tennessee.
Wow, there's gonna be a lot of throws into the Tennessee River.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. Joe Milton now knows how to throw the football. And when we saw against Clemson, he can actually land those deep passes. So if he could do that all of next year, and think about this, Josh Heupel has a whole other offseason to even work on him even more. Yeah. I mean, if Anthony Richardson can go number one overall, then why can't Joe Milton go number one overall? I mean, this dude has the biggest arm that we've ever seen. So, some NFL team is going to jump at Joe Milton next year.
But imagine having back-to-back, Joe Milton and the Hooker drafted, I think, Hendon Hook, imagine both being drafted in the first round.
Yeah, well, I don't think Hendon Hooker is going to get drafted first round just because of the injury. And I think, too, there's also questions about, does Josh Heupel's offense translate to the league? Drew Lock is a Josh Heupel product, and he didn't turn out very well in the league. So I do think there's that question. But I think Heupel does have Milton has special arm talent that NFL teams are going to be very intrigued by. But we'll have to wait and see in a couple of weeks what the Panthers do. They are on the clock. A bit of a score update real quick. In the first round, about halfway through the first half, Arizona State leads Nevada 26-18 in the first four.
I have also a quick update. Sorry, I looked a little bit shocked. What a goal by Atlético Mineiro. Great cross from Hulk, former Zenit and Porto player. Cross perfect for Paulinho. Great header, great play. Galo 1-0, Atlético Mineiro 1-0 versus Millonarios in the Libertadores Cup. They're going to be reviewed by the VAR, but Galo, Galo's Atlético Mineiro is in front.
Gonna be interesting to see who pulls it out there. Sounds like a fun back and forth game. Really quick, some NASCAR. And the most interesting thing to come out of this week's race in Phoenix, William Byron won his second straight race, outlasted Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson. Really heartbreaker for Harvick. This is his last season. Could have gotten one of his last wins on Sunday. Didn't come to be. But the most interesting thing came after the race because Denny Hamlin, driver of the 11, he has his own podcast now. So he talks about his races now every single week on Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s company. And he went on his podcast and admitted straight up, I intentionally wrecked Ross Chastain at Phoenix because Hamlin and Chastain had several run-ins last year. Chastain wrecked Hamlin like 3 times. And in the second last race of the year, when it looked like Hamlin was going to advance the championship that's when Ross Chastain sent it into the wall at Martinsville and stole the last spot away from Hamlin. So Hamlin absolutely despises Ross Chastain. And Chastain again wrecked him a few weeks ago at the LA Coliseum. So Hamlin decided at the end of this race, when he knew he wasn't going to win, that he was just going to intentionally take out Ross Chastain. They both get a bad result. And after he admitted that he wrecked him on purpose, he got penalized $50,000 and lost 25 driver's points. And a lot of people in NASCAR world are saying this, and I agree with them. Denny Hamlin is letting Ross Chastain live in his head.
Wow, what a beef. It's complicated when you do something on purpose, especially risking other person's life.
Oh yeah, like I mean, this is NASCAR. Like it's super dangerous to wreck, especially in these cars. You know, we've had multiple people like miss races with concussions. So the NASCAR is going to take it really seriously when you come out and admit that you wrecked someone, especially on your own podcast. I mean, I, that's just so stupid. Like I can only imagine like a Dale Earnhardt going on a podcast and be like, "Yep, I totally wrecked Terry Labonte to win the race." You know, like you just don't do that. You know, it's really Denny Hamlin is certainly a sociopath, and I think he needs to reevaluate himself because the thing about Denny Hamlin is he still has never won a championship, and I think it's antics like this that keep him from winning because he gets fixated on other drivers instead of focusing on running his own race. And mental toughness is the number one key to NASCAR or any racing series.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know NASCAR better than I do, but if that's so unprofessional.
It really is. So I'm curious to see how this moves forward. They're at Atlanta this week, Super Speedway. Um, I'm looking forward to a couple weeks, especially COTA, the Circuit of the Americas. Jimmy Johnson announced he's coming back. They've got a couple of F1 racers. I think they have like Jensen Button, I know is one of the guys. They have Kimi Raikkonen that's going to be racing at the Circuit of the Americas race. So some big names coming in for NASCAR here in a couple of weeks in Austin. Last American topic, and I put in this last because I wanted to transition into Brazil. What were you saying, Gus?
Score update: the upset is getting bigger. Ipiranga from third division nationally just scored a beautiful free kick goal, up 2-0 against first division team Bragantino. Beautiful, beautiful free kick. Sorry if I'm looking a little distracted. It's just big soccer night in Brazil. I have the podcast here. My TV's in the Brazilian Cup. I also have a tab in Libertadores, so it's a big soccer night.
Yeah, I mean, Bragantino, that's just a terrible, terrible result. But I do want to bring up the World Baseball Classic that's been ongoing. And USA Baseball has been kind of up and down. They're 2-1 so far. They defeated England and they defeated Canada, but they got absolutely smashed by Mexico the other day. And now they play Colombia tonight. You're actually in about 15 minutes. They play Colombia. They need to win this game. So I do think that they should win. Obviously, their lineup is really, really good. But the thing about the United States, I think that's going to come back to bite them. This pitching rotation is just not very good. And it's kind of sad that the top pitchers and top American pitchers decided not to throw here. And I get it. They're trying to save their arms. But when you got other stars like Shohei Ohtani balling for their own countries, it makes you look really weak not to represent the United States. And I really hope that this game continues to get bigger and bigger so the Clayton Kershaws of the world actually will show up and pitch because that's what America needs.
What I want to understand is that you talk so much about patriotism in the United States of America. That's something I learned from it in the 7 years I lived in the U.S. Is how patriotic everybody is. And when you have a chance to wear the American uniform, playing the sport that you are top of it, and you kind of don't represent because you want to play spring training. I mean, what is the difference between playing in Arizona or Florida or representing the U.S.? Like, already have a greatest preseason ever, playing games for real. I don't understand. And it's going to be I think the fan base is going to be divided. I think Colombian fans are going to show up as much as the United States. It's going to be a jam-packed game down in Miami, Florida.
Absolutely. I mean, they got to find a way to win this game. It's going to be tough, but I think this lineup will find a way to get it done. At least I hope they do, because if they fail to advance with that lineup, that would be so embarrassing.
It would be kind of like the 2004 basketball team in the Olympics.
Yeah, it certainly would. I'll be curious to see who ends up winning though. Puerto Rico, shout out to them. Technically part of America, but they have their own team. They pitched a perfect game yesterday, and they might be the favorites to win it all. So it certainly would be interesting to see how this plays out. I don't like our chances of to win it all just because the pitching is not great. Not when Adam Wainwright is your number one in 2023. 2013, sure, I could live with Adam Wainwright then as my number one. I can't live with him right now as my number one.
Yeah, I think this. I mean, I think it's going to be a massive game. I think it's going to be kind of like when U.S. faces Puerto Rico a couple of years ago in the World Baseball Classic.
Absolutely. All right. I lied before. Last American topic, CONCACAF Champions League. So what's going on with that, Cus?
I want to bring an interesting story, though. I don't know if you heard it. So there was a matchup between Austin FC and Violet from Haiti. So the thing that makes this game interesting is that the U.S. government denied visa for 14 players in the Violet roster. Half of them were, I think, 5 or 6 of them were in the starting lineup. So they had to sign 4 or 5 emergency players who are playing in the semi-professional leagues. They won the first game 3-0 in Haiti, and they survive. Violet survived. Austin was only able to win by 2-0. So what a hit story by Violet, advancing to the the Elite Eight, to the quarterfinals in the CONCACAF Champions League.
It's such
Another
a failure for Austin. Such
a
failure.
Big failure. Big
you
failure.
Cannot lose to a team. Amazing for Haiti. Amazing for that team. I mean, all the structural disadvantages that Haiti has as a country, and how that gets over to a sports team. Jason and I were having this discussion related to the World Baseball Classic, but how Dominican Republic, they're both Dominican Republic and Haiti are both on the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean. The Dominican Republic has all of these professional baseball players, all these resources. Haiti, on the other side, has virtually no resources. So huge win for that team, but embarrassing for the MLS team. I mean, it just goes to show the MLS is too diluted to truly ever compete on the big stage.
Yeah, and one player I'm really disappointed, Emiliano Rigoni. He was very good in Sao Paulo. He left for Austin to be one of the stars, and he's not been playing really well. He's in a really big drought, and I know the coach make excuse in the press conference, but you're dealing with the team that is in a country with so many economic and social problems. A team that had to deal with the U.S. government literally denying visas for starting players, and you have to find amateur players to fill the roster, and you're able to. I know they had to win by 3 goals to go at least to penalty kicks, but great story, great kind of sports story, but Austin FC, what a tumble.
Yeah, I would like to know why the U.S. denied them visas. That's what I would like to know.
They also last season, another team in the Caribbean had problems. I think the team was going to play the New England Revolution last year. Was also had problems with visa. I want to say new. Because it's not the first time this happened. I wanna see who they played last year. Oh, Cavalgi. I don't know how to Cavalli. The team, I think they are from. I want to say they're from a Canadian team. They had even a Canadian team had issues with this kind of visas. So I don't know, but what a great story by Violet. Another team who took care of business in the CONCACAF Champions League in the MLS side was Philadelphia Union. 4-0 win over Alianza. First game was 0-0, so they advanced to the quarterfinals. Uh, Orlando City currently playing right now. In the second half, they lost 1-0 to Tigres in Mexico. They're losing again 1-0. I mean, not surprised Orlando City doesn't look that kind of ready for the stage yet. And the other American team who's going to go play this week for the CONCACAF Champions League is LAFC. They're going to play Alajuanense in about 40 minutes. Their first game, they won 3-0, so they should take care of business.
Yeah, at least one American team knows how to get it done, I guess. But man, I look at it over FC Austin. Man, that's just how embarrassing. I'm looking at some of the comments on their Twitter post, and everyone's just roasting the crap out of them.
Oh, they deserve.
Yeah, man, just brutal. All right, I guess let's find out what's going on down in Brazil. And there's an interesting story in terms of the International Swimming Hall of Fame that involves both America and Brazil.
Yeah, the ISHOF, which their headquarters is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, announced their, as they call, a spectacular class of 2023 Hall of Fame inductees. Of course, the biggest name is Michael Phelps, but another name that got in is the Brazilian swimmer and national champions by representing the Auburn Tigers, Cesar Cielo. He's from around here where I live. He's from Santa Barbara do West, which is the city nearby Americana. He has a lot of projects here. He's very beloved here. And it's great to see him being inducted in the Hall of Fame. He won the gold medal in 2008 50-meter freestyle, which is one of the biggest accomplishments in Brazilian sports history. He has a record in the 50 freestyle, which is 20.91 seconds, which is still on. He's still on. It was like no, it lasted for 15 years. This record, when it was broken in December, he made this record in December 2009, and it's still going on. So it's still going on for 15 years, and his second world record in the 100 freestyle endure as much as long. But I guess the biggest inductee is Michael Phelps. Do you consider Michael Phelps one of the greatest American athletes? Not only swimmer, but athletes.
Yeah, I mean, what he did in Beijing, I mean that just will never be matched. I mean, getting 8 golds in one Olympics, I mean, it's just unbelievable what he did. 23 gold medals in total. I mean, just all of the hardware. It's one of the main reasons why Americans just love swimming. Like when it comes to the Olympics, even I, as someone who is not even that much into swimming himself, like I sit down and watch the swimming events because I know that's something that Americans are really good at. And, also shout out to, on the other side, Missy Franklin, who huge in the 2012 Summer Olympics. She's also getting in as well, had the record until Katie Ledecky broke it. So also shout out to both Marcelo Pilon and Jason Warwick. But Michael Phelps, definitely one of the most iconic.
Whoa,
good athletes of all time. And Jason, he says, go ahead.
I was gonna say that it was so great to see both of them, Cielo and Phelps, going on at the same time. They were a once in a generation swimmers. Because Brazil has a tradition with swimming. We had Fernando Scherer, Gustavo Borges, but Cielo topped all of them with the gold medal in 2008.
So this is getting kind of ugly. Real quick, Arizona State 48, Nevada 22. 3 minutes left in the first half.
I
Nevada's
guess.
getting ran out of the stadium.
Whoa.
So, yeah, Nevada didn't deserve to be in. Just straight up, did not deserve to be in. And if I'm a Vanderbilt fan, pretty upset right now. But shout out to Jason. He says, I'm making my first career lineup card. Good luck to you, man. First, he has his debut as head coach tomorrow for Louisville Central High up in Kentucky. So hopefully the Yellow Jackets get that dub to start off 1-0.
So let's transition to Brazil, but I have another news that involves both Brazilian and American teams because FIFA is introducing a new format for their Clubs World Cup in 2025. 32 teams, 32 to be like a truly Club World Cup. This format will be launched in July of 2025. CONCACAF, which is North and Central America, will have 4 teams. CONMEBOL will have 6 teams. 2 of them are Brazilians already because Palmeiras won the Libertadores in 2021 and Flamengo won in 2022. I guess one American team will be there because Seattle Sounders won in 2022. So I guess they will be in, I imagine. Europe will have 12 teams. Asia, 4 teams. Africa, 4 teams. Oceania, 1 team. And the host nation will have 1 team. The only issue, though, is we'll have to see if the European teams will agree to play in the summer for a FIFA tournament instead of like friendly tournaments that they play in US or in Asia.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, that will really help a lot of these club teams gain the popularity in this bracket. So hopefully that'll become just as big as the International World Cup.
I don't know because the European teams are not gonna be carrying that much. They will treat this as a preseason tournament, especially playing in July, which is literally their preseason time. So they treat this as like an International Champions Cup, the tournament that was held here in America with European teams playing. So, but I guess it will be good for North American and South American teams to have a chance to win a big tournament because even though European teams aren't going to care as much, I think North and South Americans should care because it's a huge deal. It's a huge title being a world champions.
Imagine if we eventually get that's MLS champion versus the champion of Brazil.
The Libertadores, the champions of South America. I guess Brazil has been winning so much Libertadores. It's kind of it's the champions of South America, but it will be nice. It'll be really cool. So I guess that's the big first news in soccer. I guess going down more in the before going to state championship, actually, Brazilian Cup second round. We kind of like our biggest playoff tournament. Like we talk about March Madness in college basketball, which is like America's biggest playoff. We have the Brazilian Cup. We had some upsets. First division, Goiás lost in penalty kicks to Águia de Marabá, 0-0, and the team from Pará 7-6 in penalty kicks. Another upset, Volta Redonda from third division eliminating now second division Atlético Goianiense 1-1 and in regulation, 5-4 in penalties. But the other games were not went not like when expected. CRB 5-0 to Operário. Ituano, I mean, what a week for Ituano. Ituano eliminates Corinthians. I mean, Ituano has been on a roller coaster. They were almost relegated 2 weeks ago. They were on the brink of elimination 2 weeks ago. They beat Santos at home, saved themselves from relegation, and they ended up going to the quarterfinals for the state championship. Then they go in the Corinthians Stadium, draw 1-1, eliminate Corinthians in penalties, And today they host Ceará, tie 1-1, and another win in penalty kicks, 4-2. What a week for Ituano. I mean, they got the money from going to the third round in the Brazilian Cup. They're gonna have the money for going to the playoffs and going to the semifinals in the state championship. They have nothing to lose. They're playing the current state champion Palmeiras, which is the heavily favorite, so they have nothing to lose. But what a 2 weeks for Ituano. What a story.
Absolutely. I mean, Itawana, as you said, going from the brink of death to the semis, I mean, great for them. And I can only imagine how that's going to change the trajectory of their team. I do have to wonder, though, what this week means for Corinthians. Because it feels like Corinthians, they've been on the periphery of trying to make a run at Palmeiras to try to be that top dog in Brazil, and you can't even beat Itawana.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to that point in a little bit. Let's actually go right now because Corinthians and São Paulo, they were hosting the quarterfinals against, really underdog teams. Like Corinthians lost to penalty kicks to Ituano. Corinthians had a 11-point difference to Ituano in the group stage. 22 versus 10 points. I think 11 points, but still huge differential. And they played terribly at home. They only tied because of one chance they got. They really miss Renato Augusto, but Corinthians cannot be held by one player. It's not like if the Corinthians if Renato Augusto plays, they play great. If Renato Augusto doesn't play, they play mediocre, medium at best. But they cannot be, depending on one player so much like that. And the question is Fernando Lázaro ready for that job? Because when Corinthians hire him, he never coached a team before. He was a rookie coach, and Corinthians only got him because he was the son of a really iconic Corinthians player from the 70s. He was part of a Tite's coaching tree, but I don't know. Like, there's a lot of question if Fernando Lázaro was ready for this job or not.
Yeah, and you got, for all the credit for giving Flamingo and Victor Pereira, this is just as bad for Corinthians and Sao Paulo. So, yeah, those coaches, especially with the standards that they have in Brazil for their coaches, definitely the seats are going to be very, very warm.
Yes, and the standards should be making at least the semifinals, because if you make the state championship semifinals in Sao Paulo, you face your rival. But if you're eliminated in the quarterfinals, you are eliminated by an underdog. And, I guess you can say Ituano, even though they did not good group stage, they are in the second division nationally. They almost went to the first division nationally last year. If they had beat Vasco at home, they would have gone to the first division, but ended up losing. But São Paulo lost to Água Santa. And I want to talk about Água Santa for a second. 10 years ago, they were starting their professional story because until from 1981 to 2011, Água Santa was an amateur team. It was playing on city tournaments and region tournaments for amateur teams. So then in 2011, the team decided to go professional. They played their first professional season in 2013. They got a promotion to the third division in the state. Then in 2014, they got a promotion to the second division. Then in 2015, they got a promotion to the first division in the state. But then they went back and forth. They were relegated to the second division in the state. They got some back and forth. But this year, they got the right coach, and they did a really good group stage. They ended up tying at points with Sao Paulo. They only lost in goal differential. That's why São Paulo hosted the game, even though they play at Palmeiras Stadium because of a Coldplay concert, which, by the way, I don't think Palmeiras is gonna ever, São Paulo ever is gonna play at Palmeiras Stadium, even though it wasn't any problems. There was there wasn't any like any issues or anything. But going to a natural turf to artificial turf, I think that was a huge deal for São Paulo players. They ended up losing 3 players by injuries, two key players of Galopo and Wellington Hato. And São Paulo played nice, but they ended up not scoring when they needed. The game ended up in a tie, and then Agua Santa on penalty kicks advanced it. I was very emotional yesterday because I was the first B reporter to cover Agua Santa professionally. I saw this team being born professionally. I watched this team first, first and second promotions, and now I see them making history.
When it comes to Agua Santa, I'm always going to associate them with Coldplay because I said that I believed that they had a sky full of stars and they were going to pull off the upset, and they did. And Coldplay, in a way, helped them win this game. It sounds like with all the injuries.
Yeah, that's true. Who would have thought Coldplay was gonna help Agua Santa? If 10 years ago somebody would have said that, it would be like, how this international band is gonna help this team that is starting their professional life? But somehow their lives got intertwined.
Absolutely. I guess there was a scientist somewhere that helped them out with that.
Yeah,
but not to start. Not to start with another round of song puns, but yeah, I mean, obviously amazing for such a young club, and I feel like it's really rare for a young club to just spring up and get really successful and really hot like that. So amazing.
They have to address, they have to, because this team unfortunately is known as the criminal team. A lot of people associate them with a criminal gang called PCC, which was never been proved. There was never been any link between them, but there was a kind of one of those myths and rumors that grows and everybody catches on it, but there was never proven. There was never any indication whatsoever of criminal activities in Agua Santa. And there's a lot of how can I say, like a lot of prejudice, because just because they're from a city called Diadema, which is a inner city, it's like Newark. It's a city that is near Sao Paulo. It's connected to Sao Paulo, but has a lot of violence issues and a lot of housing issues. It's not it's a kind of like a rough city. It's an inner city, but now they first time ever a team from Diadema made it to the semifinals in the state championship.
Absolutely. I can only imagine the pride too that comes from a run like that, for a city like that.
One thing that I'm really sad about of the Paulista Federation is that they don't get to host the semifinals, even though they are the higher seed, even though they deserve. The Paulista Federation pull away from them. The game's going to be the semifinal between Agua Santa and Bragantino is going to be in Santos Stadium. I don't understand why this game didn't go to São Bernardo, a city literally connected to Diadema, but I guess both Agua Santa and São Bernardo stadiums were up to the standards of the Paulista Federation to host a semifinal. But what I don't understand is like they weren't gonna play any big team like a Corinthians or a Sao Paulo or a Palmeiras. I wouldn't understand if they were playing one or Santos. I'll be like, okay, that's fair. They're gonna have to move to a bigger stadium, it's a bigger stage. But Bragantino is not gonna draw thousands of fans to Diadema. It's so sad the Paulista Federation took it away from the city of Diadema to host a semifinal. I'm just sad.
Absolutely. They deserve to. I see their stadium only has 10,000 people, but still, they earned the right.
Yeah, if the stadium was capable to play games during the group stage, why cannot host it a semifinal game? Like, oh, they don't have lights. Like, play on Saturday 3 p.m. Brazil time, like they always done throughout the Paulistão. But there are some things that I'll never understand the Federação Paulista, the Paulista Federation does it. But I'm just happy. And Agua Santa might be even happier because currently Bragantino, as I point out, losing 2-0 to Ipiranga, be eliminated in the Brazilian Cup. So Agua Santa is going to play a team that is going to be very not as confident. There's going to be a lot of question marks about Bragantino if they lose this game.
Yeah, honestly, it sounds like to me, Agua Santa, they have way more points than them in this group stage. They've been playing better than them. I think it's not an upset if Agua Santa wins.
Wow. I mean, if Agua Santa makes it to the Paulista final, I have to go. I have to go to the game against, I guess, going to be Palmeiras. I think Palmeiras. I mean, but imagine for the
Yeah.
Paulista Federation if the Paulista final somehow ended up being Agua Santa and Ituano. The TV is going to be, I mean, the ratings are going to go really taking a really dive, and the sponsors and the federation, the TV, the TV, the broadcast it, all are gonna go nuts, and like all the forces to be are rooting for Palmeiras. I guess they not really care much if Bragantino or Agua Santa makes it, but all the forces to be that I pointed out are rooting for Palmeiras, because if Palmeiras are eliminated, gosh, that's gonna be not a very attractive final. I myself, for example, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because you know I don't know if I'm gonna broadcast Agua Santa and Ituano, even though it's a final. I know.
Yeah, would there be that much of a drop in interest?
Yeah, it's like if currently right now, let's compare it to the to the March Madness. It's like let's say I'm pointing out my how can I say my bracket. Uh, Hold on.
Is it like, if we got like, I don't know, Kansas State and like Creighton or something?
If I'll say even worse, I'll say it is like if we got Kansas, Utah State, like we've got Kansas, I'll say Kansas, Kansas Marquette, Kansas Marquette, Utah State, and Kansas Marquette, Utah State, and let's say Xavier.
That'd be an interesting Final Four. But that wouldn't have none of the well, Kansas has a pretty large fan base though in
Yeah, like
basketball.
Palmeiras, like Kansas,
Yeah,
like Palmeiras.
yeah. But yeah, I could see how that would be pretty that wouldn't be the most exhilarating Final Four.
Yeah, it's like, and then imagine like Kansas get eliminated, then you know you're gonna ended up not having an interesting final. Then the
Like if
last
it's Utah
time,
State Xavier.
yeah. So imagine it wouldn't be that. It's like Xavier, like Ituano, in the higher seed, second division nationally, almost went to the first division, had a rough patch, but still. And like not Utah State, I'm gonna point out. Let's think if was Charleston, good team, but it's in really lower seed. Like
Right.
Xavier and Charleston make it to the national championship in basketball.
I could see how that would just tank ratings completely.
That's like
Yeah.
and then think about this. Then it's not only one game, it's two games. It's home and home game in the final. So then I don't know where the game's gonna go, if the Police Federation is gonna let Agua Santa and Ituano host their games in the final. But I'm curious to see. But I think Palmeiras at this point, they're so much favorite. They're playing so well. They're in the top of their game. So I would say though, it's gonna take a lot of guts and a lot of performance for Ituano to pull up a third miracle, because they beat Santos, they beat Corinthians. Can they beat Palmeiras? Can they beat 3 games in a row where they eliminate big dogs?
Yeah, that would they are giant killers.
Yeah, they killed
I
2 giants. Can they kill the third giant, the current champion Palmeiras, the current Brazilian and state champion?
Yeah, I think their David story ends though. I'll go Palmeiras versus Agua Santa.
I'm gonna go Palmeiras and Agua Santa too. I'm gonna go Palmeiras and Agua Santa. I think it's gonna be one of the biggest finals. What I think is gonna I believe what's gonna happen is Agua Santa is gonna host in Morumbi, and then Palmeiras gonna play at their stadium. That's what I think, is Morumbi is actually the Sao Paulo stage is actually really close to Diadema, so it would be like taking a bus. It's not. It's like a 20-minute, 30-minute, 30 to 40 minute bus from Diadema to the Sao Paulo stadium.
All right. Jason Wirecast shared his Final Four prediction. He has Arizona, Kansas State, Houston, and Kansas.
I think Kansas will be only an unanimous pick from all three.
Yeah. Of course, he's much higher in Houston. I know they're 31-3. I don't know. I feel like every time I've watched Houston, I feel like they really struggle. But again, I feel like it's only the big games I've watched of them. But at Kansas State, that's I think a very plausible pick. Arizona is really good. Although we both have them losing to Missouri, but I almost wonder though. The thing about these March Madness picks is sometimes you can read a bit too much to the conference tournaments, and I feel like Missouri might be one of those teams where I'm liking them a bit too much coming off of the tournament. So I don't know. But that certainly is a very. I think there's any combination of Final Fours is very possible this year, just because this is going to be chaos. I don't think anyone's going to come close. If anyone has a perfect bracket heading into Friday, they're a genius.
Quick update, quick scoring update. Atlético Mineiro now is going to go to the group stage in Libertadores 3-0. What a beautiful goal. I guess it's by Hulk, I want to say. Yeah, I think that's it. Number 7, Hulk, really was like a kind of like a bicycle goal, as we call here. Number 7, Hulk scored beautifully 3-0 Atlético Mineiro in the Libertadores group stage.
Yeah, at halftime, Arizona State leads Nevada 53-26. Absolute beatdown of the Wolfpack. Looks like the Sun Devils will be advancing to take on TCU. Unless a crazy comeback happens.
And Bragantino scored as well, 2-1, and they're trying to tie the game to send the game to penalty kicks, but Ipiranga fighting for their life, surviving 2-1. Rio de Janeiro State Championship, Flamengo finally won 3-2 versus Vasco. Now they have the advantage to play for a tie in the second game. Vasco only need a 1-goal differential to advance. And Volta Redonda, that qualified for the third round in the Brazilian Cup, also beat Fluminense 2-1. So now they can tie the second game to go to the Carioca State Championship final. Fluminense only has also to win by 1-goal differential to get to the Rio de Janeiro State Championship. So I guess now it's also playoff time in America and Brazil. Let's see what happens. I think Flamengo is going to go to the final to face Fluminense in Rio. I think Vitor Pereira is going to have, I think he's going to keep his job for at least another week or two.
Yeah, about to say, how many more chances does he have?
I think they're going to keep him as long as he's in the Rio de Janeiro State Championship. But if he's eliminated, he's out. And then what the rumor is that former Flamengo head coach Jorge Jesus, who was very beloved, won the Libertadores in the Brazilian Championship in 2019, he said that he's not staying in Fenerbahce for next season. So he's going to leave the Turkish team in May. So the thing is Flamengo going to fire Vitor Pereira and then appointed an interim head coach until Jorge Jesus can be signed in May? That's the big question.
They just don't seem to know what they want.
They don't know what they want.
They're like the anti-Packers. It's just like,
but you know what they really need to go for Jorge Jesus is that they need to get the myth out of the way. If Jorge Jesus come back, either he do a good job or a bad job, at least the myth is out of the way. So even if he does badly, Flamengo is gonna be better in the long run, because then I guess he doesn't do a good job, doesn't win any titles, and get fired. At least Flamengo is not gonna have that cloud over her, that myth hovering over.
Yeah, I think at some time you got to rip the Band-Aid off. I know it kind of reminds me a bit with where a few years ago when we were looking for a new head coach, when some people were wanting Lane Kiffin to come back, and maybe there was a brief period where I wanted Lane Kiffin to come back as Tennessee head coach, and the whole Ole Miss situation with him faking injuries against Tennessee last year, I think cemented that he should never come back to Knoxville.
Yeah,
But
it's like if Jorge Jesus goes to Vasco, it would be like, I don't know if Flamengo fans would have forgave him, but I think the only team in Rio that can sign Jorge Jesus is Flamengo. So but I don't know if Vitor Pereira. I think what the Flamengo front office wants is that Flamengo to win the state championship, and then they can keep Vitor Pereira for at least another month or two, and then he starts battling the Brazilian championship, and then they can fire him in May, and then go and get Jorge Jesus. That will be the Flamengo front office dream scenario.
yeah, I mean, I'll be very interested to see what they do because it just seems like that they are not very. They just don't know what they're doing
Definitely doesn't know what they're doing.
at all.
But I guess that's time to wrap it up.
Absolutely, we've been here long enough. But anyway, enjoy March Madness, as Jim Nance would say, friends, and we'll be back next week to recap what's happened. We'll see if the Vols have disappointed us again, or to see if they actually made it out of the first round. I not holding my breath, but I have put on record that the Vols are making the Final Four. To the probably my detriment. But we'll see what happens. Go Vols, beat the Raging Cajuns, and then the Blue Devils or the Golden Eagles. I think that's what Oral Roberts is. Whatever they are.
Real quick update. Bragantino is out of the Brazilian Cup 3-1 for Ipiranga. So upset in Brazilian Cup.
Also, go Lady Vols. Good luck against St. Louis and then potentially Iowa State. Also, good luck to the Chattanooga Lady Mocs. And remember, we made this deal last week. If the Lady Mocs somehow upset #1 Virginia Tech, become the second women's team to ever win as a 16 seed, we will go live from the UTC campus. So that is the deal. So from Americana Sao Paulo, Brazil, my pleasure has been Gustavo Tomazeli. And from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, hopefully the land of the next great Cinderella, it's Nicholas Hill. Enjoy March Madness.